Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah. Morning. Happy election day.
Happy election day, but for us, happy earnings day as well. Um, just checking the markets as we come on. Stocks are up modestly. Today's going to be a little weird because obviously elections impact markets. I don't know which way, depending on what, but so the market Disney earnings may not be as big of a impact necessarily as they normally are, um, just because there's other things happening.
Kind of a weird. Is there like rules about when Disney needs to do their meetings? Because it seems strange to do it today. Because they don't always do it on a Tuesday. It's sometimes on Wednesday or Thursday. So I don't know why they wouldn't have.
Yeah, I, I,
Done
I
it.
was wondering that too. It's I don't know if it's intentional or coincidental, or I mean, just in that, are they trying to hide something, or
I
I
mean,
just
not like they thought of it at the time, but I guess it's kind of good to, even though they're in California, to get it out of the way of the subtropical storm that's approaching Florida now.
right. So as the consensus is, just taking a quick look of 55 cents for the quarter, according to CNBC, um, which would be down from the third quarter. So the fourth quarter would be August, September, October, as opposed to May, June, July. Now, what we don't know is speaking of subtropical storm, what is
Nicole.
it? Nicole. We have Ian would obviously impact earnings somewhat at Disney World for the quarter that we're reporting now, which literally happened right at the end of the fiscal year. Um, September 28th, 29th, 30th was kind of the impact. Um, and so, we that could dampen earnings just because that sort of increased costs while decreasing revenue. But we shall see.
That's also
Um,
3 days out of 90 in a quarter.
oh, sure, but I just know in the past that and obviously this storm didn't impact as much as, let's say, Charlie, where there was major damage or what have you. But I would say major might be overextending it, but
These are theme parks, to be clear. Obviously, the
right,
storm had impacts out other places in the state, but as far as Disney is concerned, it was fairly spared.
true. And I don't know the impact in terms of like bookings. The cost is somewhat, because these cast members are just basically getting paid to sit in the park. Um, I don't know what the I don't know what the impact's gonna be. I mean, that's why it's hard to kind of say. Is I know when those other tropical storms, just being closed a day or two, um, can be impactful. Now, it's not in the heat of the summer, um, as some of the other storms were, where you might even be losing whole reservations just because people can't get there. But I really don't know. I mean, that's what I'm gonna look forward to. I'm looking um, to see. On the media side, I think we're kind of trying to wait to see also um, Disney Plus subscribers, um, where that ended up. It was also, it's not a big movie release quarter for Disney, so that business, which is still in flux, is not really impactful. But I think people will be wondering, you know, how is Disney Plus doing, particularly um, with the upcoming changing to pricing, upcoming launch of the advertising. They're going to be looking at ad rates. Now, we've seen advertising based internet stocks such as Meta and um, the owners of Facebook and Twitter's probably not a great example, but just as
Yep, they're a private company now.
but I think we'll see how that what the ad market looks like, because that not only affects this legacy broadcasts such as ESPN and ABC, but with Disney Plus launching an ad tier, people are going to want to know what kind of ad rates they're getting, which is
Mm-hmm.
a new wrinkle that people, will be digesting. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction to the numbers will be, because, and as we mentioned earlier, the election might not make that as clear, because these earnings will come out as not as early results come out, but as people may be getting a vibe, and are they meeting their targets? Are they not meeting their targets? Sometimes too, the earnings results will come out and the stock will go one way, and then once the CEO opens his mouth, the things will go a different way, because they'll understand the numbers, or they'll say, "Oh, that's great, but next quarter's going to suck, or next quarter's going to be great," or whatever.
It is weird. Like, I know that the fourth quarter for Disney is late summer, so it's not like the summer we're used to, as far as like May is when the big Marvel ones have opened. But it is weird to think about how different the box office has been. Like, All in the Game points out, like next quarter, or the one we're in now, will have 2 big openings presumably. So yeah, it's kind of weird to think about. Yeah, when was the last time there was like a big Disney theatrical release?
I mean, the last one I can think of that's well, I don't, which was Lightyear before
That
Multiverse
wasn't
of
even
Madness?
big. I said big.
Well, I mean, what they
No,
thought
I
was
know
going
what
to
you
be
mean.
big. I
Yes,
mean, yeah, I mean that's
because like even Encanto, like that was open in theaters obviously, but it was fairly muted in theaters. It was when it hit Disney Plus that it became what it is now, which is ever present.
well, and I think it's what's interesting is with Disney
Oh yeah,
Plus.
Multiverse of Madness. I guess that was a while ago.
Yeah. Good morning, Gio. Yeah, and you are right, but I think what's interesting is with Disney Plus, it's about subscriber numbers. So, like, we get excited when there's box office returns, um, and you can see the impact it's going to have, but you don't really get that from a streaming release. I mean, Hocus Pocus, the most streamed movie of all time, or something like that. Like, that's great, but did it drive subscriptions, or is it just people already had it, or I I don't. It's not as much fun to have that. I mean, on the economic side, to have a big release, it's not going to move the needle. A bomb isn't going to move the needle either. It's all about just sort of a constant level of investment, reading, having a certain pace of releases, and you don't get that huge sort of frozen surprise if it's on streaming, because sure, they watch it 100 times, but
Well, yeah, directly in streaming. But I mean, if you look at the DPEP side, like, what if Hocus Pocus becomes the $12 billion franchise or something?
sure, but I mean, I think there's a question, right? Outside of, it's happened, obviously, Stranger Things, being an example, but like, has streaming ever launched a big merchandise franchise? And I even think of like Disney Channel. Sure, like you could maybe make a case for something like High School Musical, but you don't, like, all those billion-dollar franchises don't come from streaming typically, or channels, or whatever. They come from movies, or I mean, you could say Disney Princess is not necessarily a movie, or Winnie the Pooh. I think Spidey and His Amazing Friends is a big deal, in terms of building up that merchandise franchise. But that's even a little, it's a little different too. I just don't know that, I mean, there's some fan hocus, there's Funko Pops and stuff, but I don't see like a huge merchandise push for Hocus Pocus 2. Like, especially now, like it's such a seasonal property. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I could see streaming streaming did make Encanto like a huge deal, but I don't know if Encanto would have that same resonance if it didn't have that sort of theatrical push at first. Even though more people saw it on streaming, I don't know. I mean, we haven't proven it yet. It could happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's from all appearances, I don't think that the theatrical release made that much of a difference for that. I guess it would have been interesting if it did just go straight to streaming, even though I know Tony Betty would have probably had some words about that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's we don't know and what we don't know, and they've noticeably moved away from Premier Access or anything like that, where those answers would be pretty clear.
On that, can I have, this is a slight tangent, but with Black Panther opening, I know it just opened in France. They had the premiere showings, and that was a big deal because they skipped or are going to skip Strange World. Do you know if Disney wanted to do a premiere access thing in France still? Is that against any sort of terms, or because it's a streaming service, could they still do that?
I don't believe that they can put it on a streaming service until whatever, even if it's an extra charge.
No, I know, but I'm saying like with Strange World, if they wanted to
I see
charge an extra fee, could they? Or is that
I don't see any reason they couldn't if it's in that country, but I don't know that they would.
I don't think they would either. I'm just curious as far as, that it's a very interesting law. So there might be all sorts of weird things in there that I don't know.
Speaking of weird laws, All in the Game asked about China. Who knows with China right now? I mean, obviously they're going through sort of I don't want to say change because it's the same guy, but the fact it's the same guy is a change. And there's a lot of stress. When we started doing this a while ago, it's all about BRIC countries, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and a lot. That's not as emerging. Those emerging markets are not nearly as didn't play out the way they had hoped. China is still. They're still Shanghai Disneyland's closed, right? Like they're still dealing with COVID. They're also becoming more adversarial in many ways. I hope that's not controversial to say. Brazil's going through its own growing pains. India, Disney's has a great presence at, just not a huge revenue driver because of the economics of the country. And so that big China's the big market, which is what resulted in the building of Shanghai Disneyland, is just not as prevalent because the politics of the country at this moment. They still have the big Zootopia attraction, which will open eventually, so they're still somehow investing in there, but it's in regarding theatrical, I think they're so trying to guess which movies are granted the honor of a theatrical release in China is a little bit above my pay grade because I can never figure it out. Even I think back to Iron Man 3 where like they added scenes in it for China just to get a release, and that didn't play out the way they had hoped either. So, it's not a. I think it's no secret it's not a free market, so it's complicated.
What is the split in Shanghai as far as ownership? Because I think in Hong Kong it shifted because I think Disney bought a couple of points back. So I think it's like 52-48 or something like that in Hong Kong. But do you know what is it?
Well, Hong Kong is a little bit more complicated in that there's the park itself, and then there's the operating company. So the Shanghai Shendi Group, which is China, basically, owns 57%. 43% is owned by the Walt Disney Company. Then you have the operating group, which I'm not quite sure. I believe is majority Disney owned. But I'm not quite sure I don't know where the split is. And I think we've seen, we saw what happened. The challenge of these sort of split ownerships is if you want to invest in it, you got, the capital call is proportional. So that's where they ran into a problem with Disneyland Paris, is they wanted to expand it, but the other owners didn't want to invest in it. So Disney just basically bought the whole thing so that they could grow it as they saw fit. But I don't, especially, China and Hong Kong. Even saw it in Hong Kong where Disney had hoped to build a second park, wanted to, at least keep their options open for it, or, even the expansion project. And that was sort of a political negotiation. Especially with Hong Kong and Shanghai competing against each other, sort of for ego. So, Shanghai gets a big castle, so then Hong Kong gets a big castle, and noticeably all the attractions that they added to Hong Kong Disneyland in their last expansion, where the 3 new lands are not in Shanghai Disneyland, with the exception of Toy Story. But even then, some of the attractions are different. So, I don't envy the folks that have to manage that relationship. But I'm just going to look ahead. Look, right now, Disney stock is up about 7 basis points. They are over 100 for it's at 101.38 right now. If you're looking at the 52-week high was 179.25, so significantly.
That was still during the. I figured that was way in the past at this point, but I guess not.
Yeah, it was basically. Well, it's basically exactly a year ago. So basically, a year ago was the high, and the low was in July at 90.23. And just looking, because the 52-week high was exactly a year ago. Just want to take a peek. So it basically looks like the peak, if you're looking over the last couple of years, was, and this even predates the pandemic. If you go back 5 years, the high was in March of 2021, before Netflix made the streaming economy collapse. But Only Game has a good question about. I think this is about China. Is it a loss given that you only get a max of 20%, 5% of the box office? It's not so much just the box office, but I don't know if you're specifically talking about China, but the building the brand is the challenge there. If it's here too, that's what the theatrical releases do. Is if in China, where they didn't necessarily grow up with the characters that we know, introducing new characters, and there's no streaming service in China. Theatrical is sort of how you get new characters, which then how you get new merchandise and build the park, attractions up. The parks are relying on. I mean, Zootopia was the number 1 movie of China, right? Number 1 animated movie of China. So that's why they're building a major Zootopia attraction over there. And over here, the theatrical question is why wouldn't you turn it down? Like, I just don't know. There was this, Rich Greenfield sort of thought that, why don't they should put everything on streaming? Just go streaming. But I don't know that someone's going to subscribe to a streaming service because they get to see it day and date versus waiting 3 months. And I mean, or even waiting 5 months, right? Like, if you're going to subscribe because you want to watch the Marvel movies, or the show, you have exclusive content. I don't see why you would not make extra money, even if it's not, a direct to consumer relationship, even if you're going through a third party. Like, why turn down a revenue stream? Never really made sense to me, especially when you're already investing in content that people would subscribe to the service for anyway. And and if they're not going to go to theaters, they're going to subscribe, they'll get there eventually. Then it's not like it's, they're waiting 12 years for the basic cable window, whatever it is. I never got that idea that, they should just put everything on streaming and just nuke everything else to get there.
Well, I mean, especially like if you can market that, if the window is only a few weeks now, like the biggest thing is, you can promote it for the theatrical release, and that kind of flows over to the streaming release. You don't have to do 2 completely separate campaigns like you used to do for theatrical and then DVD.
Well, and Disney's been, I think, a little too stringent on that release strategy, because what frustrates me is like they'll have a Marvel movie come to streaming service while there's a Marvel series coming to Disney Plus, and it's like, why don't you wait until that runs out and then release it, even if it's a few more weeks. You don't. I don't know that. I think the collapsing of the window, they've been a little too aggressive with. And this has been an ongoing thing. And I'd rather they were like, okay, for this movie it's gonna be quicker. For this movie it's gonna be longer, because I don't know how much some movies, I swear it's on streaming before it even fully plays out its theatrical release. I mean, this isn't a Disney movie, but like Top Gun, I mean, it was playing forever and making in money. But once it comes up on streaming, you kind of lose the will to even go see it again on the screen, or maybe people are busy or what have you. I think that should be as less of a sort of a straight 45 days to be more flexible, depending on the rollout of the film.
When did Barbarian open theatrically? Because I swear, like in the past couple of weeks, as it hit streaming, that I've heard everyone talking about it, and I know our reviewer saw it a long time ago because I think it was at Comic-Con, wondering when it actually opened in theaters.
I believe it opened September 9th.
Okay, so it had a month in theaters, or like not even, or was it on streaming at the same time, or was it just like a 2-week thing? Because everyone I know has seen it on HBO Max, and that's but it's getting like really huge buzz now, but it was post theatrical.
Well, I mean, that one released, so it looks like it was about 45 days. It came out on streaming October 26th.
Okay.
And that one,
a Searchlight film, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Even though it's weird to say it's on HBO Max, but I think
no, it's not a Searchlight film. It's a 20th Century Studios film.
Okay, but it's a Disney owned film,
right?
That one was weird because because a lot of the 20th Century films have been released on both Hulu and HBO Max, but if you go to look at it on Hulu, you have to watch it on Max. It like redirects you.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
I think they went title by title on that and probably didn't expect this to be the juggernaut it is. I was thinking this one makes sense, right? It's a horror movie. You want it out on Halloween. I think that makes, like, for me, that's like, okay, that makes sense. But I remember when Santa Claus 3 came out, and they're like, and it was when they were talking about moving the window to like 90 days, right? And they asked about Santa Claus 3, and he's like, well, that one we're gonna hold longer because we're gonna release it during Christmas, like on home video. And to me that makes sense, right? Like if they released a Christmas movie December 1st, I don't think it should be on. I don't think they should release it on Disney Plus January 15th. But
I also forgot Thor when we were talking about movies, because that one was a little bit different. They did hold that a little bit longer because they wanted to release it on their new Disney Plus day. That's
which it's like Easter, it floats. So, and Thor came out in July, right?
Yeah, so that will be in this quarter, or no, right. August, September. Oh no, through October, yeah.
So
July,
at least that will impact earnings.
Not terribly positively. I don't think. I guess it did okay. It was just a little disappointing, right?
I would say it's a little disappointing, but not. I wouldn't say it was disappointing. I mean, I feel like it was almost more disappointing
critically.
Yeah, or fan base. I mean, it wasn't bad. Like, I don't think, but it wasn't what the juggernaut they might have thought it would be.
I finally saw it in English.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Or most of it, at least.
I'm keeping an eye on CNBC in case something happens, and I see our buddy Carl is on Squawk on the Street. So
nice. It's a boy.
Well,
while we're here, I feel I should mention Walt Disney World's announced the first couple of closures with the storm coming. So, of course, the classic one, your Fort Wilderness, Copper Creek, the bungalows at Poly, those are going to be closed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday currently, and that means Hoop-Dee-Doo is going to be canceled. But those are the only closures there for now. I think the water park's also closed.
Water park.
Yeah, the one that's open is closed.
Yeah, and Blizzard Beach is supposed to open on Sunday. the storm will be over, but sometimes it takes up all the heat. So I don't know if you're going to want to be there at 65-degree weather. But what do I know? I should say the cruise line has had some impacts. They're still running, but some itinerary changes on the Wish and Dream, I believe.
Sounds like a single ship. The Wish and Dream.
Do you remember when shock and awe was a thing?
Yes, the Iraq War.
Yeah. So I kept hearing the term, but I didn't have the context. And so I thought it was like some sort of survivor tribe called like shock and awe.
Okay.
But Gio's point here, people know if it's coming to Disney Plus, X not be willing to see it on the big screen, just wait. Which I think is the idea. But I also think, I think we all know it's coming eventually. I don't know. That's a thing. I don't know how much of a thing it's going to be. How it changes from 3 months to 90 days compared to 5 months or whatever it is. I don't know how that changes your perception of it. I know it does, but I don't know the number. Like I can't put a value on that.
And I do feel like you're talking about customizing that window for things. I have a feeling James Cameron's not going to let them put it on. Avatar is not going to be on streaming a month after it opens in theaters. Could be wrong.
Yeah, well, and nor should it.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like his MO. I also, yes, you're right. Based on the way that the first one played, they shouldn't because it never made more than like 70 something million in a weekend, but just kept chugging along, just like Titanic did too. It's kind of his thing.
Well, and I wonder too, like if they kind of need to come out and be like, hey, this one's not coming quickly, like because now it's become an expectation as opposed to the
only in theaters. No, really, for a while.
Right, yeah, like seriously, for a while.
We need it.
Yeah. One of the games says Thor did about 760 million without China, which is 94 less than Ragnarok, which I don't know if that's there's a lot of factors that can come into that.
That's not bad though.
Yeah, I would say, especially with the theater, I don't know about you, but theaters here, they're not even all reopen, and when they do, they don't have as many showtimes as they used to. There's staffing issues, I think.
Pretty consistent. In France.
Yeah, well, you saw it in France, in French. Like, well, they didn't have an English version. Like, I don't know.
That's true. That was a little weird because when I saw Spider-Man, they only had one show, but they did have it in English. I think some of the theaters in Paris had some English showings, but I wasn't gonna travel that far just for it. Went to Disney's Village instead.
It's kind of like when they have an international film here, and like the hipsters always see it like subtitled as opposed to dub.
I prefer sub to dub too.
Yeah, right. But like, I'm surprised. Like, I guess that's not a thing over there, where like there's a big movement to see it in its natural language.
I mean, I think it probably depends, but yeah.
Yeah. But
well, I mean, it makes sense too because you see that Tom Holland is visually in their Web Slingers, but it's not his voice. It's the French version.
Well, that's what's funny about some of the, like I think at Epcot now people are getting experience it a lot more where it's like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure where it's French Remy and English Remy at the same time, and it's to me it's always funny when some attractions they go one way or the other completely, but I find it always interesting how they decide like to tell a complete story in both languages while using two different languages.
Yeah, and not make it completely repetitive if you are bilingual. Like it's usually someone will say something and the other one responds to it in a way that you kind of understood what the first one said, even if you don't speak that language. It's very interesting.
Oh, you're right. We should blank, blank, blank.
Of course. I forgot about
like that might be my like WDI dream job. Because I also like it in shows that's like deciding which characters are going to speak English and which characters are going to speak French.
Tell your favorite example.
No, I'm not going to anymore. I wasn't going to actually because I know I've said it plenty. If someone asks in the comments who doesn't doesn't follow us regularly, who doesn't know, I might say it, but I feel like you all know.
Well, we've talked for a half hour. Anything else Why don't you give us a quick hit list of things we should look for during this announcement and tell people where they can follow along?
Well, don't forget you can get all the news as it happens on LPTV, laughingplace.com/TV. And we will be tweeting out the earnings call as it happens shortly after the bell. We'll be parsecing through the earnings as well. They should come out shortly after 1 o'clock Pacific time with the earnings call, I believe at 2. But
Usually
also
it's a half hour, so it should be 1:30, I would guess. Or did they push it back?
that's what I'm trying to find out. Yep, it's 1:30. You were correct. It used to be an hour because like the earnings would come out at the half and then but they kind of compressed it because I don't think Bob Chapek appears on CNBC as quickly as he used to, or as quickly as the other Bob did. But I think what people are really going to be looking forward to today is some content from Disney. We got the Black Panther review will be going up in just under 2 hours, so you can see what we think about it, and then go to other websites you trust less. And you're the editor. Have you read his review?
I did not. I have it. I could read it. Yeah. It's on. I have a Slackbot reminder for 8:45.
And then at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern will be the first Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. So Jeremiah will be there, hopefully braving the wind, sleet, and snails.
Sleet? You think there's going to be sleet?
It's a subtropical storm. I don't even know what that really means.
Well, sleet is ice pellets, different than hail. Hail is more likely than sleet.
Hail Hydra.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say too that what was I going to say? Disney World is Mickey Very Merry. Oh, speaking of earnings, if you want to help our earnings, visit click one of our Shop Disney links, and we'll appreciate the affiliate feedback. I know
Commission.
Commission. Correct.
Because it doesn't cost them anything. We just get a taste.
It's just buy like you normally would buy, and we will get a little something for sending you that way, because I know none of you know where Shop Disney is without us. But we'll take it. We would appreciate that.
Tano ears right now from yesterday. There's going to be some other thing today that I forget about. Or Ahsoka Tano's today. That's going on sale in like 2 hours as well. So you can look for Becca's article and you can click that link and buy away.
And they got some Strange World merchandise. So if you want to get ahead of the game, I saw that yesterday. Some of the Strange World merchandise popped up. So, which I haven't seen yet, but I hope it's good. That's going to be a real test, though, don't you think? Like a real animated family movie. Like,
yeah,
is that back yet?
Yeah, and I don't feel very confident about it. Yeah. Honestly, it looks strange.
It's got a dog.
It also looks a lot like when they enter the quantum realm or wherever they are in Ant-Man Quantumania. I'm like, oh, so this is also Strange World.
How fun if that, like, those worlds finally collide into like some.
Well, I will need the quantum realm, Strange World, and Strange Magic need a crossover.
Ooh, Strange Magic. Is that on Disney Plus?
I don't know.
That's a movie that you should see when you when you're thinking a little Lucasfilm can do no wrong. Watch Strange Magic.
When a movie is released in January and it's not an Oscar bait movie, you know something's wrong.
Right. And yeah, poor Brenda Chapman. But in any case, thanks so much for joining us. As I said, we will be coming on after the earnings call as well. But if you follow LPTV, laughingplace.com/TV, as things come up, you'll be able to get the latest news right there, as well as some fun videos, facts, park hours, things like that. So keep an eye out there, and we will.
Do we
be updating that.
simulcast our live blog too? Will it show in real time?
It should. We'll see if it happens. It's
I
still in
didn't
preview.
even know about this. I was making that up. I'm excited
Well,
to see it now.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we will be back later. And if you want some more Laughing Place videos while we wait, once again, Laughing Place TV, laughingplace.com/TV. Bye, everybody.
Bye.